DJ Loy is the senior center for the Hillsdale College Chargers, number 53 in your program and on the field. DJ, how are you?
I'm doing well, Andy. How are you?
Awesome, and thank you for joining us. Looking back a little bit at your career, obviously redshirted back in 2008 as a true freshman, co-freshman of the year back in 2009. Do you know who the other co-freshman of the year was?
Nick Galvin was the other co-freshman on defense.
So a safety and a center, huh? They spread it out a little bit, huh?
Just a little bit.
What about those early years? I mean, obviously you were a successful high school player back in Westerville, Ohio. You redshirt that first year, not a lot of playing time as a second-year freshman in your redshirt year. Talk a little bit about that transition from high school to college.
I think the main difference was size and speed. And Columbus, Ohio, I'll argue with anybody, has probably the greatest football in the nation, high school-wise. But coming to college, especially at this level, guys are enormous and they're extremely fast. And so just adjusting to the speed of the game and the complexity of the system we run was probably the biggest challenge.
2010, you started all 12 games at the guard position. That included a playoff game. That transition from guard to center, DJ, was that a difficult one for you? What are the differences between playing those two positions?
Well, the main difference is snapping the ball. And I guess in difficulty in transition, I got to play next to Phil Dorfler, and on the field he was a perfectionist, and he graded out at 96% or better for most games. So he's very good, and it was great to just learn from him, learn our offensive scheme. And so the center also has to call out the line structures for the defense, and that changes the blocking schemes for everyone. So I think that was probably the biggest hurdle, was kind of getting outside of the box you get in on the field and learning the entire line and not just your one position.
As a guard in the scheme that the Chargers run right now, are you out pulling out to the edges on those trap blocks? And does the center ever do any of that also?
Yeah, the guard pulls quite a bit, but our center pulls a lot, especially in our outside zone schemes. The center's typically the second puller, and then every now and then on a counter, depending on alignment, the center will pull as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was definitely interesting, trying to work that out without scissoring off the snap in Anthony's hands.
Yeah, the first thing is to get the snap to Anthony, right?
Yeah. In trouble if you don't.
And then you take off from that point. DJ Loy joining us, the senior center for the Chargers. What about making the playoffs in 2010? Playing a guard at that point in time. You mentioned Dorf in the middle at the center position. How special was that to get that opportunity?
That was good. That was the second season, because we made it, I believe, in 2009.
Right.
And that's the one where we went too deep and we went back to Grand Valley. But 2010 was a lot of fun. The playoff game was very cold, I remember. It was like 4 degrees. We were on the Mississippi River in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Of course, me and linemen, we don't wear sleeves. So we're in our cold Under Armour, and there's a jet heater on the sidelines and the sideline jackets. And I mean, it was a blast getting to go on the plane and everything, but definitely one we would like back.
Yeah, you're playing that ball game. We get there. We don't know if Joe's going to be able to play. You find out that he can't. The day of the game. And obviously, Joe Glendenning, a huge part of the offense. What was the take from the rest of the team when you found out that he couldn't play? Do you remember your reaction when you found that out?
You're always disappointed when you have a player of that caliber who can't go. But the mentality you always want to have is that next man up. And, I mean, it is a team sport, and you want to have everybody prepared mentally and physically to play on game day. So I think it was Brad Spencer.
Yep, Spence. Yep.
The guy who was in phenomenal back, stepped up and helped a lot in the offense that day.
Yeah, for sure. And it was a pretty good ball game. I mean, you're playing a super talented team. Last year, DJ, a big season for you. Your junior year, you're an honorable mention All-GLIAC selection. You're the offensive player of the week in the month of September. Your team had a lot of success, obviously, rushing the football. What about that junior year, really solidifying yourself finally as a center in the GLIAC conference?
I think the Ashland game, you don't particularly pay attention to the plays as the game goes on. You remember what you did really, really well. You remember what you did really, really poorly. Mm-hmm. And so you come in on Monday nights and we watch film with the coaches and they give you your scores for the week. And, I found out he got offensive player of the week, and that was against a guy who went in the 6th round, Beerus Pendleton from Ashland, and he's with the Jaguars now, and he was a load. And then the other guy was an all GLIAC selection too, and I'm sure he's going to be in the league one day. And so finding that out, that was a huge honor, and I didn't even think I did that well for the game, honestly. But it felt great.
Yeah, DJ Loy with us, the senior center for this football team. Joe Glendenning is basically rewriting all of the records. 1,400-yard seasons. He's broken the touchdown records. I'm not going to go through all the records that he's broken. Every time I talk to him, and anytime you read an interview in the paper or whatever, he refuses to talk about himself. He always talks about you. And by you, I mean you and your fellow offensive linemen. Do you think he really deep down, is that all for the media and the rest of it, or does he really give you guys that kind of acknowledgement and recognition?
I would say he gives us that recognition all the time, and that makes you want to block harder for him, and that makes you want to work harder. Joe's the type of guy where, we have injury check on Sunday, and that's where you go in and get treatment, and he's in there first, he's out last. He's always in there working on something, trying to get better, whether it's an injury he's trying to get healthy or he's in the weight room just trying to get better as a player. And that kind of mentality and that kind of attitude, it pulls everyone up. It brings them up a level. And then on top of that, you never hear him talk about himself, and he doesn't carry himself with any arrogance. And so I would say he's exactly like that off the field and outside of the media.
Yeah, and he just seems like a genuine guy. And another genuine guy is Nate Schreffler, your position coach. I just interviewed Otter this weekend, and he said that Nate Schreffler is the best offensive coach in the country at his position. And whenever I've talked to Jared or to Dorf or any of you guys up front, it just seems like nobody can say enough about Coach Schreffler. What is it specifically, DJ, about him that has made him, this rushing game, just so incredibly successful?
I think just his willingness to learn, his willingness to adapt. If he doesn't get it right from the start, he'll work at it until it does get right. And just the amount of time he puts into watching film and coming up with an offensive game plan for the week. On top of that, he's a pretty good force in motivation. One of the best speakers I've heard, and just an all-around great guy.
Can you take us inside how that works? I mean, you talk about your position coach giving you that motivation. When it comes right down to it, does a lot of that come from the position coach? Is it mostly from Coach Otterbein? Do they kind of share that in terms of motivating their players? How does that work inside that locker room?
Well, are you saying more on game day or just
or any time? Yeah, game day or at the practices.
Really, you don't see the coaches in the locker room during the week, but during the game day, once we're in the locker room and once we've gone through our warm-ups and we're back in waiting for the game to start, Shreff will walk in and we get the offense together and he'll get us all riled up and then give us what the first play is going to be. And we break it out, and then right before we go out on the field, we'll get called up, and then Coach Otter will give us the pregame speech. And both of those are always pretty motivating. They get the blood boiling, get you ready to play. But as far as practice on the week-to-week basis, in terms of motivation, all they ask for is your best effort all the time. And I think that's a pretty fair agreement. If you want to be successful, you're going to have to work at it. And so if you don't give your best effort at all times, then they'll make sure you give your best effort through other ways.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure they have their ways of motivating you. DJ Loy is the senior center of this football team, and Chargers have a huge matchup against Grand Valley this weekend. Before we talk about the Grand Valley game, a couple of moments during this year at Wayne State, you came out of the game. I assume that you were injured in some way. We had a little trouble grabbing the snap and the plays that you were missing. What happened to you? How were you able to get back into the game? Talk a little bit about that moment.
It was a wedge play, and my ankle got rolled up on from the pile. So it had taken, I've played for a few years, so body's starting to get beat up, but I went out and got taped up. I think I had more tape than I had ankle. And, when I could, run around, kind of walked it off a bit, I just went right back in the game, and I've been working with Lynn and Gus and Amy. Our whole training staff, they're phenomenal, especially if they just take time to do whatever they can to get you healthy, to get you back to playing.
Well, my partner Jim Eckert was talking about this during the Saginaw game over the weekend, and he said you can't afford to lose a lot of guys, but you really can't lose your center. I mean, like you mentioned, you're calling out the blocking assignments. You have that symmetry, don't you? That chemistry with Anthony, having played with him all year long. I would think it would give coaches ulcers to be losing centers in the middle of big games on the road.
Well, the guy who's right behind me, Mike Kendrick, he's a 5th-year senior, and he's been at center his whole career here, and there are times when if I do have a question, so I'll defer to him. He's like an encyclopedia on our offense. So in terms of schematics and calling out defensive fronts and just getting the job done, Mike's completely fine.
Yeah, he can handle it when he needs to, and has been able to step in during the year. What about the game at Ferris State? I talked a little bit about this with Brett Miller last week, but I'm interested in your perspective as well, because I think it was the key moment in the season, from my viewpoint anyway. We're down at halftime, on the road, hostile environment, their homecoming and all the rest of it. You guys come out in the third quarter and handled Ferris State in the final 30 minutes of that football game. I'm looking for somebody to kind of put a fine point on what happened there at halftime. What was the adjustment? What was your assessment of the way that you played in that second half against Ferris?
Well, I think our style of play is you keep throwing punches for 60 minutes. Every time you put your hand in the dirt, you know you're going to give your best effort. And that wears on defenses. Eventually, they can't sub in guys enough where everyone's getting a rest, especially with the no-huddle offense. And so I think what happened with the Ferris game is we just kept throwing punches. We just kept fighting. And eventually you want to say captured their will. And I felt like that happened, especially in the end of the fourth quarter. I think we had a drive that took up most of it, didn't we?
How about that? How gratifying is that, though, for you offensive linemen, when you have, as you've just perfectly described, you have completely worn out that defense? I mean, you guys were rushing for 8, 10, 12 yards a carry there at the end of the game. They couldn't stop it. They knew it was coming. They couldn't stop it. It doesn't get a lot better than that for an offensive line, does it?
No, that's our touchdown.
Yeah. Yeah, and it sure paid off. What about the game last week? Saginaw Valley coming in, they're ranked 15th in the country. And I just felt again that you guys capitalized on opportunities in the second half of that game when it came down to winning it. And it just looked like everybody was on top of their game, despite the injuries. I mean, Cam getting knocked out in the game. Joe, I don't know what percent Joe's at right now, but it's certainly not close to 100 in my view. What about gutting it out and taking care of business against Saginaw Valley?
Yeah, I mean, we had Isaac come in, and he stepped up when Joe had to go out and get taped up and get treated. And, you know, he's a great downhill runner. He got his first career touchdown. We have a great core of young H-backs and tight ends, and they all stepped up. Cam's a huge loss, and we still don't know the full extent of his injuries, and it would be great if he could come back. But in the event of the worst, we have guys who can step up and make plays. And that the same thing that I described with Ferris happened with Saginaw. Eventually, you wear them down to the point where they don't want to come on the field and play football anymore.
Do you feel, DJ, that you get enough credit that the line? A lot of people consider the offensive linemen to be, sort of the thankless job in football. You do all the work up front. You're in the trenches. You're fighting that battle, and you don't get the statistics. It's hard to put a finger on statistics for the average fan. I know you guys get graded, but for the average fan, there's no touchdowns, there's no rushing yardage for you guys, there's no receptions, there's no passing percentage. Just overall as an offensive lineman, how have you been able to find, validation at your position despite not having all of the accolades and all of the attention?
There's a lot of self-fulfillment that comes with it. Especially when you do something great, like you get a good pin block or you spring a block that gets a touchdown. And I think those are really the ways that we find, our happiness within the game. The other would be when you have backs that just rush for a ton of yardage. When you get both Joe and Anthony going for over 100 yards a day, that always feels great. And really, it's just you want to win. If we win, it doesn't matter if we grade out at 60%. I mean, you're upset you didn't play great, but at the end of the day, I would rather be 60% at all my games and then have us win a national championship than have that scenario reversed.
Last thing, DJ Loy, center for the Chargers, Grand Valley State. Even though they've been a little up and down this year, it's still Grand Valley, isn't it? They have a lot of world-class athletes on that team, and I know you guys aren't taking them lightly coming into homecoming this weekend.
No, absolutely not. And they know what's at stake, and they're going to come in ready to play. And we've had some great games in the past 4 years, so they're going to come in ready to play football. Should be a high-scoring game.
Should be a lot of fun, and I just want you to know that we've really enjoyed watching you guys play. That whole line, I mean, you guys really are a brotherhood. I don't think the average fan and, the people that come to the games maybe don't always understand how well you guys have to work together within that scheme, and it really is fun to watch, and the proof is on the scoreboard each and every week. You guys do a great job, and just best of luck the rest of the way, and especially this weekend against Grand Valley.
Thank you so much, Andy.